Right, so Rishi Sunak and his family business ties to government contracts. They've been a hot topic of conversation across social media this week as rumours, for that is all they are, have been circulating for days that the Indian IT firm Infosys, started by the father of Rishi Sunak's wife, akshata Murthy, who benefits from millions in dividend payments annually thanks to her own shares in said company. She has a 0.93% stake in the company. Tiny, relatively speaking, but it still means she gets some £690 million annually. Now, Infosys have given Sunak a headache on several occasions, and entirely justifiably. Firstly, it emerged that as a non-dom, his wife, bearing in mind she was married to the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, was therefore permanently resident here, living above number 10, as they were, and indeed had children here. Yet she didn't pay tax on her dividends thanks to that non-dom tax arrangement. Well, Sunak claimed ignorance over all of that, didn't he? Despite obviously living with her, and despite the image forming in all of our minds, the man who was in charge of the nation's finances, as he then was, apparently didn't have a clue about the financial goings-on within his own household. Having been caught, Murthy ditched the non-dom status, which is expensive to keep up. You don't just forget you've got it, and pledged to start paying tax here. Later on, it emerged that despite the war in Ukraine and UK-based businesses being advised by the government, advised by Sunak, to not do business with Russia as a result of that, Infosys very much were, with an office in Moscow, no less. Now, being Indian-based, we have no say here over Infosys' dealings with Putin's Russia, but when a leading figure of our government, now the Prime Minister, of course, is benefiting from financially convenient connections via his wife from Russian business dealings, let's call it, well, it puts Tory oligarch donations in the shade somewhat on the Tory greed scale, doesn't it? Sunak's wife cannot, of course, guarantee some of her dividends are not from those Russian business dealings. Assurances were made that Infosys would indeed pull out of Russia. Yet by November of last year, 8 months after saying Infosys were pulling out of Russia, they were still known to be operating there, presumably assuming we'd forgotten about them by that point. For all I know, they're still operating there even now. We don't know any different, so the Sunaks could still be benefiting potentially from that. However, the latest headache that has sprung upon Sunak isn't actually true. But because of this previous track record, it has still stuck. It's chimed with the public psyche. It's believable because these previous stories of the Sunaks and Infosys left a sour taste in our mouths. This very wealthy couple who do not need the money, let's face it, were avoiding paying tax here until that non-dom status got found out about. They got caught, and still, to this day, they may be taking Russian rubles in a roundabout way. That's the thing with the very rich, though, isn't it? No matter how rich they are, it's never quite enough. Anyway, the rumour that has stuck, that has come about, relates to the recent emergency alert we should have all got on our mobile phones on Sunday. Not all did, I believe. There were issues with customers of 3, for instance. It wasn't quite as successful as it should have been. The contract for the emergency alert system, though, was handed to Japanese IT firm Fujitsu, and here is where people put 2 and 2 together and made 5. It all stemmed from a 2003 article, a press release from Infosys, in fact, saying they were working with Fujitsu to produce some new software. The fact that Infosys has also since partnered with Australian phone company Telstra to develop an emergency alert system there has only added more fuel to the fire. But it is bunkum. There is no connection between our emergency alert and Infosys. If you want to hammer the Sunaks over Infosys, over their links, over how they could be cashing in at our expense and out of the government, there are other connections about that are true, that you can do so and go to town with them over. You only need to actually go to the government's own website to find out. On the government's website, you will find the contracts finder page. Punch in Infosys into the search box and see what comes up, and it lists contracts awarded in reverse order, beginning with the most recent. Infosys has been awarded, according to this page, 27 contracts by the public sector here in the UK. For example, in January just gone, Infosys got a contract worth £1.7 million from Transport for London as an implementation partner in a project called SuccessFactors. In October, they got a contract worth £4.4 million from the Care Quality Commission. And in July of last year, they got a £350,000 contract for testing services from the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, and so on and so forth, all the way back as far as 2015 when they got their very first contract. 2015. What's familiar about that year? Oh, yes, it's the same year Sunak became an MP. Coincidence? Well, it couldn't possibly comment. These 27 contracts, though, mean that since 2015, Infosys has benefited from public sector contracts worth roughly £172 million. How much of that is profit? I obviously couldn't say, but this figure on its own would have been worth some £16 million to Mrs. Sunak in dividends. The actual figure would be less. It's not all profit, of course. But of course, she will have got something out of that pot in the grand scheme of things. And this is what has made a rumour so believable on this occasion, the sort of rumour that it is. Sunak and his business connections and those of his wife, especially when proven links to government contracts come up, when conflicts of interest are suspected. It's happened a lot to this one very wealthy couple who are in effect running the country. I've not even brought Sunak himself and his personal interest into this. Those Moderna potential links, that blind trust of his, another expensive structure to avoid conflicts of interest that remain a mystery as to what's in it. This is just his wife's interest we've been talking about here. When they're caught seemingly to be doing things that are in their own personal interests, when they're supposed to be running the country, when they've been caught in compromising positions before, then they face accusations of doing that yet again quite easily. It always becomes more and more believable, but we have to be wary of crying wolf too. I'm more than happy to offer the clarification here and spell it out that this particular story was not true. There's plenty of stuff we can attack the Tories over and attack Sunak over that are entirely justifiable and true, and that is absolutely where our focus should be, holding them to account for those, without having to make stuff up as well. If we go down that rabbit hole, we start doing that, then we undermine any effort to show ourselves as being any better. Any contract handed to Infosys with this known family connection, knowing the Sunaks will benefit from business that company gets here, should warrant more scrutiny. Absolutely. But it has to be truthful and honest. Otherwise, they'll just be in more of a position to get away with going on the take. We risk ending up being less trustworthy than they are, and we don't want to be less trusted than the Tories, surely. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below. And I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.